Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me on another of my amazing interviews. Today, we're going to be talking to a lovely lady about heavy metals. Now, not talking about Iron Maiden and all the heavy metal albums that you may have had as a kid and, done your brain in that way. We might be doing our brain in a different way in the environment, in all the different toxins that are around. And often we don't know they're there. And if we do know they're there, we might not know how to deal with it. Well, my guest, Nikki Shepherd, is an expert, a specialist, let me put it that way, a heavy metal detox specialist. I told her I'd garble through the intro, and I have. And there she is laughing. She's also advising on EMF mitigation or exposure. Let's find out what all that means. Nikki, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, we met at the Better Way conference, which was a lovely place, and I think you're a colleague of Glyn Hughes, who came on the show talking about EMF, the electrical magnetic fields or frequencies, as he said, and how they can be giving us adverse effects. Heavy metals is something that, as I said, some people just associate with music, but it's a lot more worrying than anything like that. Could you explain what they are and their harms?
Well, heavy metals are literally in everything. We're getting bombarded on a daily basis. So they estimate that we're absorbing something like 80,000 heavy metals and toxins every day. So they're in the water, they're in the air, they're in our foods, makeup, even in baby products. They're absolutely everywhere. And I don't even want to think about what's in the tap water. I think most of your listeners are probably using some sort of filter, hopefully, or distilled water. It probably started with the Industrial Revolution in the 1890s, where, refineries and smelters were allowing the toxins to seep out from the factories into the soil and into the air. And
I suppose they didn't know the damage that it was doing, do you think, back then? Did they, though? Maybe. Who knows? They're not here to ask.
Who knows? I mean, we're, 100 or so years later, and still, modern medicine is not talking about this topic. Thankfully, we've got lots of functional medicine doctors who made the connection some time ago. And, if anybody goes through the allopathic route and gets tested by the doctor like I did, they will ask you, to do a scan, they will ask for a blood test, and they're pretty much one-dimensional tests because they never seek to find out what have you eaten, what have you done, what's your lifestyle, and, could we do a stool test? Could we test you for a hair mineral test, to see what's going on in your, in terms of toxicity? So, I mean, I did try. The reason I came down this rabbit hole was because I was very, very sick myself. I went from super healthy. I was going in the gym 3 times a week. I had a really good job in media. And, I would have said at the time I was super fit. And, you think you're invincible. But as I sort of got to about 38, 39, my energy started dropping, and it's just a really weird feeling because I knew something was wrong, but, doctors are absolutely useless. And I just think for autoimmune or so-called autoimmune conditions, they really do not know what to do with people. And the best they could offer me was antidepressants.
Right. So you're all right to be covered in heavy metal, but don't be depressed about it. Don't let it get you down, love. You'll be all right with all that clanking metal inside you.
Exactly. And, and the ironic thing about it is pharmaceutical medications, a lot of them contain heavy metals. And
so what kind of metals are we talking about then? And I mean, presumably they all have different levels of danger.
Yeah, well, mercury is the worst neurotoxin known to man. And if we were, I don't know how old you are, Richard, but, if you're around in the 70s.
Very young, very
probably
young.
A lot younger than me. In the 70s, they were packing our mouths with amalgam fillings.
Yes.
And I think that's where my problem started, but it just laid low for a while until it manifested itself later on. So I had a mouthful of, I think, 10 amalgam fillings. And at the time, nobody batted an eyelid. Why would you put toxic metal in your mouth and leave it there for the rest of your life? And when I got to being a teenager, I developed adult acne. And of course, I went to the doctors and said, what can you do about it? And they gave me antibiotics. And when they gave me antibiotics, they said, oh, take 2 a day and then, come back later or whatever. And I stayed on those antibiotics for 10 years.
Blimey, they must have been tasty.
Nobody checked on me.
Really? That's amazing.
No follow-up whatsoever. So the metals accumulate layer upon layer upon layer, and they sit in all the vital organs. They'll sit in the gut. Mercury particularly sits in the gut and messes up the digestive system. It's really bad for fertility. In the endocrine system, you've got aluminium, which is in the air that we breathe and in the soil, and that's a very bad neurotoxin, as we know. I mean, we're reaching epidemic levels of Alzheimer's, dementia, and I think probably that's where I was heading in later life. And I just stumbled across this heavy metal, toxicity, just doing lots of research on the computer. And this was long before Facebook groups. And I started talking to people all over the world that were suffering from, so-called autoimmune conditions. And a lot of them said it's rooted in dental work. So,
right.
And actually, I've since found out there are so many different ways, but, so I latched onto that, and I found a doctor called Hal Huggins in America, who wrote a book about the link between the immune system and what's going on in the mouth, so oral hygiene. And the fact that when he realized what he was doing, by putting these toxins in the mouth, he started removing them, and he found that people that had Parkinson's disease were being cured overnight. People were coming out of wheelchairs once they had their fillings removed. And it wasn't just fillings, it was root canals and crowns. And I don't know if you remember when they used to put gold crowns in the mouth.
Yeah.
So if you put 2 metals together, like mercury, amalgams and gold, those 2 metals then resonate with each other, so they spark. So you've got this constant activity going on in your mouth.
Blimey.
So the book, once I read that, it was just such an eye-opener. And I was already waking up to the system anyway, that, natural health was the way to go. So I took all my amalgams out. I mean, prior to that, I had a whole history of interventions where the medical system advised me to do things, and they really are not good for your health. Like, for example, getting cervical tests, the smear tests, which sometimes throw up what they call precancerous cells. And a doctor and a nurse persuaded me to have laser surgery on my cervix while I was 5 months pregnant. And this is after the years of antibiotics and other things. And once I'd had I remember laying there thinking, this just doesn't make sense to me. Why would you do that? And I kept saying, is it safe? Is it safe? And they said, yeah, it's absolutely fine. We do it on pregnant ladies all the time. And
laser surgery.
Laser surgery on the neck of the cervix. Anyway, three
as you
later,
say, it doesn't sound. It's like, wait till I've had my baby. Thank you.
Yeah, you'd think, wouldn't you? But this is, we've been lied to on such a massive scale in so many ways. 2 or 3 weeks later, I gave birth. So my baby was 3 months early, and he almost, he was very, very sick. He was in an incubator for 7 weeks. So there's a whole lot of history there, I mean, if anyone was going to wake up to it, it was going to be me. And thankfully, he's really healthy now. But when it came to him coming into the world and them asking me to give him interventions, that wasn't going to happen. So when it came to the scans with the doctors and blood tests and things like that, that was just confirmation, really, that I've got to navigate myself out of this situation. You know, I lost my job. I had to go move in with my parents. I had to rent out my house. And, you know, my boss stopped paying me after a couple of months. So, you know, I really had no choice but to just study and study as much as I could. And I met a guy online called Dave Murphy, who you've interviewed actually.
Oh, right. Is that allegedly Dave?
Yeah, allegedly Dave. I met him online about 10 years ago. He got me on the right track. I was already into heavy metal detoxing. But the problem was I got really obsessive about it. I experimented with it, and in those days, if you didn't do it correctly or with supervision, you could really make yourself very sick. Because what happens is you try and detox the metals out, you disturb them from the areas where they've been sitting for years, whether that's a joint or an organ, or, you know, it can be in the brain as well. And they start redistributing around the body, and then they can make you even sicker by settling somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. Well, and so what sort of thing? I mean, when you say you're trying to get them out of the body, I mean, you're obviously not standing there shaking them out. Get out, you swine. How do you, you know, I mean, I'm a complete novice, so I have no concept of how you would get, you know, if it's in your brain, pop out your ear if I bang a number of times. So you're drinking something or ingesting something that's supposed to flush it out? Is that like an oil change on a car?
Yeah, well, the traditional way is herbs. There's various herbs you can use, but I didn't do well with herbs because they are really powerful if you don't get them in the right consistency. And also it's trying to find herbs that are as pure as possible, you know, because some have contaminants in them, are the one thing that we're trying to get out.
Yes.
So there's certain powders that I was using. There was supplements where you had to take certain supplements every 3 hours. I had to buy these from Germany and set an alarm through the night and do 3 days on, 3 days off, you know, and it was absolutely exhausting.
So I'm assuming that these powders and these herbs, they're sort of breaking down whatever it is in there to get it into your. So you end up weeing it out, peeing it out, or pooing it out.
Yeah.
I mean, or sweating it out. I mean, these metals aren't in great chunks, are they? So
no, they're absolutely tiny. That's how.
Yeah.
That's where the trick is, you know, because they're so small, we don't see them in the food and the tablets that we're taking. But yeah, a good detox means you're using positive and negative charge to attract the positively charged metals and toxins, bind them, and then pull them out through, you know, through the bloodstream, and then eventually out the urine and sometimes the stool as well. But when I discovered that, I felt it was the key to health and vitality, because when I did it well, the results were absolutely instant. So, you know, brain fog would clear, my eyes would clear, my eyes would sparkle, my face would light up, and I would just feel so light. And you know, we forget how we used to feel, you know.
No.
And in our 20s, we've forgotten. We just kind of navigate ourselves through the day and we function, but we could be so much better. So I got really excited about it and I kept doing it. And I came this close to giving myself a heart attack.
Really?
So I was in the office one day and I was on the 4th day after a 3-day round of these supplements. And I was in a meeting and my brain just froze. And that's what the metals can do. You know, neurotoxins can, you know, make the brain do weird and wonderful things. And I came out of the meeting and it was like somebody had grabbed hold of my heart and was just, you know, scrunching it. So I leant up against the wall and was just trying to take deep breaths, but the pain was just unbelievable. And I was, you know, up in West London, so I was miles away from home. And I just carried on with my day. My boss was a wealthy entrepreneur, so there wasn't a case of just slacking off. So that's how dangerous it can be. And, you know, I came close to really hurting myself. So, you know, the whole detox thing is such a journey, and, you know, we're constantly learning. And in the last couple of years, I've met so many interesting people, practitioners. Practitioners are saying they are now seeing a massive uplift in people who are presenting with a so-called mystery illness. So they're doing everything right, they're eating well, doing a bit of exercise, and they still can't get well. And when people are these practitioners, the functional medicine doctors, are quite smart ahead of the game, we're all kind of talking about the issue that there's two things going on here. There's a huge amount of toxicity, which is getting worse every decade that goes by. And there's also an increase in EMF exposure. So 10 years ago, say, at home, I only had a router and a deck phone, and we was only just getting interested in iPhones then. Nowadays, our houses are just full of gadgets and, Wi-Fi, which we didn't have before. Anyone who's very toxic with metals, and, it's like the bucket analogy, your bucket's starting to get fuller and fuller.
Yeah.
If you come contaminated with mercury, aluminium, lead, because we're all contaminated. It's just a case of how
much,
yeah. What came down your mum's, what came down the placenta to babies, because when mums are pregnant, unfortunately, a lot of the toxins go down and are flushed into the baby. So the babies are taking the toxins on. So before they've even taken their first feed, they're absolutely loaded. So we should be doing this from birth or pre-pregnancy, really. They reckon that babies are being born with 250 chemicals and metals in their blood now. It's just absolutely crazy.
So somehow you've got to get these things out, but you've got to get them out in a sensible and presumably not too fast way that they all jumble together and clang against each other or spark like the gold and the mercury or whatever.
Yeah.
And are there better processes now? You said that the herbs were quite powerful, and so that could be dangerous, and shifting them can be dangerous. Is there a safer way of getting them out?
Well, 3 years ago, my holistic dentist, unfortunately now retired, so we've been friends for a while, and she introduced me to Clean Slate. So that's the only thing I ever use and would ever recommend to anybody now, because
that's safe. A product. Is that a product name or a herb?
It's a product name. It's a liquid nutraceutical, so it's derived from zeolite. But it's it's very fast. It's for some people it's they've got to take it very, very gently. It depends how toxic you are, because you don't know how toxic you are until you take one drop. But what happened with me is I detoxed so well, and I'd got myself to a point where I thought I was doing really great. But I still had to sleep in the afternoon for an hour and a half. So whilst I was better, I still had that chronic fatigue.
This great, what did you call it? Green slate?
Clean slate.
Clean slate. Is that's drops like an iodine drop?
Yes, like an iodine drop. Yeah, and you just put it in a glass of water, and then take it before bed, and then see what happens. And the good thing is you can give it to any age, so for young children and for pensioners as well. But what happened with me is I got to about the fourth or fifth day, and suddenly I woke up and I just felt that I'd had much deeper sleep. I felt energy and ready for the day, and my brain fog had gone. And I also used to wake up with aches and pains on my shoulders every morning. As most people do, have an achy back or somewhere, your joints are hurting. And that all stopped. So I wasn't working at the time because, it was in lockdown. It was middle of 2020. And, a lot of us were taking time off and taking stock of what we're doing. But up until that point, I'd been on a 10-year recovery process of healing. And I still hadn't got to the point where I thought I can actually work full time. But within a couple of weeks, I was talking to my partner about business ideas. I didn't need to sleep in the afternoon anymore. And, my brain just started opening up to believe that, our pineal gland has taken a battering. So, it's nice to know that when you do clean yourself up, your intuition really, really kicks in. And I knew I'd cleared metals because I'd done it years prior in a very dangerous way. So I knew what it felt like when the metals left. So it was the same sort of sensations. And it's just lovely and liberating to know, every stage you've got another level of energy to grab onto. And since then I've been working full time.
So it obviously is making a difference. So where do you get this stuff? Is it just from herbalists? It's not a prescription only thing, is it? Is it readily available in the shops, or do you have to send off for a special place?
No, the company's Root. They're in America, and I don't sell Root, but the way it works is, if people want to try it and if they want to buy it through me, I coach people for free. I like to make sure people are happy and they've got all the information they need because of what happened to me.
Yeah.
Although the side effects are really minimal and rare now, you know, it seems to me everyone's presenting with very common symptoms and conditions. And I just find it quite easy now to help people try and, simple tips they can do. Lots of distilled water,
Yes.
baths with Epsom salts.
I'm just looking on. Just to show the people. Is this? Hang on. Let me just get the better screen. Is this the place? The Root people?
Yeah, it's Root. I'll give you the link, but so they started up early 2020, and the whole heavy metal detox space has moved on massively in the last few years. And a lot of the practitioners I speak to, and at the Better Way conference, I was listening to a lot of the workshops there, and it was just so encouraging to hear them talking about, illness or modern diseases, degenerative diseases are a cause is very simply a lack of nutrients, but a high level of toxicity.
Yes.
And once we get those toxins out, those metals, and fluoride, glyphosate, which is in everything, and even mold, we're seeing an increase in mold cases. Get the toxins out, and the body has the ability to heal itself. And a lot of them were talking about, all the things we've mentioned today, and just simple things you can do, like the salts, Celtic sea salts. I've done a distilled water fast a few times. The water itself is magnetic, so it can pull out toxins just by drinking a gallon a day for 3 days. I'd advise you to be near a toilet when you do that, though. You've got to do it. You can't do that when you're working in an office. And
a gallon of water a day.
Table. One of the best things I ever bought. Have you heard of inversion tables?
No, it sounds like a bit perverse, but I'll go along with it.
So you lay on the inversion table.
Yeah.
And you kind of hold the handles, and you can kind of rock like that, and then you can go upside down.
Right. Is that the same as say, could you just do that like handstands if you wanted? Would that work?
Handstands, yeah, it's good. Just moving the lymph. It's moving the lymph around the body, really simple things.
Where is the lymph?
The lymph is all over the body. Lymph fluid.
Lymph fluid. Oh, okay. Sorry, you have to excuse. I'm ignorant, and somebody I know will say, "Well, what is that about? What's that lymph?" Because I was thinking, what was it, the lymph node or the lymph gland or something? My biology is terrible.
That's all right. We just need to monitor our body and see what makes us feel good. And
but what is the lymph? What actually is it?
The lymph fluid is your waste and sewage system. So if you've got toxins in your blood, it will eventually go into the lymph, and then it will be passed out through the lymph nodes. You got some.
So lymph nodes. I was right then when I was thinking of lymph nodes.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
excuse my ignorance.
Another thing that doctors don't talk about is the lymph system.
I
mean, I remember saying to my GP, I don't know what's going on. I said, but the only thing that makes me feel good at the moment is colonic irrigation. And this is what he did.
Did he? Just rolled his eyes heavenward?
Rolled his eyes. Get on the antidepressants, dear.
Yeah, send her away. So you getting on the whatever table you said it was. Inversion table, or handstands or movement. I mean, movement presumably is a good thing, other than just walking up and down the stairs.
And grounding, got to get on the grass every single day. Get on the grass before I go to bed, 10 minutes at least on the grass, because I work on a laptop like most people, and I'm electrosensitive, or have been. I'm a whole lot better now, and that's another reason why I try and give talks and things to people. Is don't get stuck in that sort of mindset that, oh my gosh, I feel so ill, I'll never get well.
Yeah.
because you can. So, there's so many things you can do to get well. It's actually quite simple sometimes. And going and standing on the grass pulls out all those positive electrons that
In
you
bare feet.
absorb in bare feet that you've
Mm.
absorbed during the day. And then I always sleep better. If I miss a night, it's hard in the winter, when it's freezing cold. But magnesium as well, that's a supplement I wouldn't do without, because that calms the nervous system. Infrared sauna therapy, sweating. I've been in traditional saunas, it's really hard on the adrenals. And a lot of people have got messed up adrenals from, too much stress, too many medications.
So where is your adrenal? Is that a gland? Adrenal gland.
Your adrenal glands give out hormones that deal with stress.
Right.
So because we're not built to be traveling up to London every day and then dealing with family issues and then darting here and there to get the shopping, and and we go to bed far too late, and the adrenal glands in most people are deficient. We're kind of run down. What happened with me is I was so deficient that I couldn't take when something makes you jump. I couldn't take anything making me jump. I couldn't walk very far. There's just the whole vitality goes out of your system. And if you get totally depleted in your adrenal glands, you just die. But when I had appointments at the hospital, because I'd give it a try, because my parents, wanted me to explore every avenue, got to the point where they had to push me around in a wheelchair sometimes, because I couldn't do the long corridors. And that's when the adrenals go, and
And what is it that's in the adrenal that is depleting?
Well, the hormones,
right. So you've got to manufacture the hormones in your body to make sure the adrenal has got enough of it to do what it needs to do.
Yes.
And you do that by good eating and various supplements and those sort of things.
Yeah, and they need to, they can regulate themselves quite easily if you put them into the right environment. And there's not enough focus on that. When it comes to GPs, they'll just give you a blood test. And they told me about 5 times, you're absolutely fine looking at these blood tests. But it's a complex system, the hormones, and if you're healthy, all the right combinations will be working together and making you feel good, helping you sleep better. I don't get any menopausal symptoms whatsoever. So, and I'm hitting mid-50s this year. So, and I'm doing something right. I don't get any headaches. I don't get any sleep issue. Sleep's always could be better. I don't get night sweats. And you'll have to speak to my other half, but I don't think I get mood swings.
So it sounds to me, apart from all of the sort of physical things and obviously the heavy metals that seems to have got into everywhere, that the way that we live is not conducive to the way that we ought to live, because our bodies haven't been built for this 21st century sitting behind computers, traveling about, sorting out lots of stressful things, and then not eating healthily. It just seems our whole lifestyle is wrong.
Yeah.
But nobody seems to want to change it.
Yeah, but sometimes you've got life experiences like a bereavement or divorce, and that takes center stage, and we're not built to deal with that, with everything else going on.
So what are we built? It sort of begs the question: what are we actually built for then? Nice, quiet, relaxing life sounds to me, which sounds very nice. I'd be quite happy with that.
Well, I studied sleep once, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that we are meant to sleep in the afternoon. We're meant to have sleep in the afternoon.
I've heard that, and because in Spain and places like that, they take their siesta. Sorry, I just got a nod off for a bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, mid interview, it wouldn't be very professional, but yeah, absolutely.
And in the old days, we slept when the sun went down, and we got up when the sun came up. So it was a biorhythm, not forced awake with an alarm clock. And there's evidence to suggest that people would get up around 3 o'clock because that was creative time. So that's
3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, which is crazy, isn't it, to think about it? But, they had loads more energy than we did. And they would eat off of the land that was close to them, organic food. clean
But
water.
if you go to bed around 8 o'clock when it's dark, it's 7 hours till 3 o'clock. I can see why people would
Yeah,
want to get up.
that's when
You
people used
go,
to write poetry and paints and things like that. But they are actually telling us what's going on there. The toxicity that is just totally out of control. In 1974, the WHO actually published a paper that said that 82% of chronic diseases are caused by heavy metal toxicity.
really?
They put it out
Right.
there that long ago. I mean, it
Yeah.
tells you everything. It was 82%. Yeah, that's right. And that's kind of been buried now, but the information's out there. And actually, I know people talk about, can heavy metals cause kidney problems, or can they cause bladder issues or whatever. And I would just say to anyone, go online and Google whatever condition you're interested in, whether it's you or a family member, and put that condition and type linked to heavy metals. And what will come up,
and see what, yeah.
PubMed papers and all the rest of it, research studies on everything that you could ever think of.
So why isn't this being cleared up? I mean, it's not the heavy metal? We know that heavy metals is in the atmosphere, if it's in the water, if it's in the food. I mean, we know it's all there. Why isn't it being cleared up, sorted out, got rid of, and is a thing of the past?
Because there's too much money in it. If people cleared their bodies and cleaned themselves up, they wouldn't need medication, would they?
No, but I mean, presumably then there must be, there's got to be some form of collusion to industry to say, could you keep putting some heavy metal into the atmosphere or into the food or into this stuff so that our business, can sell pills to make people feel like they're better? I mean, I know I talk about this sort of stuff all the time, but it's just to get it out there.
Yeah.
That big businesses, presumably acquiesce to those sort of requests.
I think so. I mean, it's gone so far now that we're finding microplastics in rain. And in America, they tested water for glyphosate, and 80% of their samples contain glyphosate. I've been speaking to an air hostess who had to come out the industry early because she said there's such a high incidence of cancer and brain tumors because of when you're traveling. And I don't want to scare people, but we know that there's a weird smell, isn't there, when you get on the flights?
I haven't been on a plane for donkey's years, so I can't remember now. Luckily.
So they recirculate the air, and so this is another thing I talk about with people, is the work hazards. You might think you're living a really clean life, but what did you do as a job before, and what did your parents do as a job before? Or do you travel a lot? Because the airlines, for example, are recycling the air in the cabin from the engine.
Yes.
And
it's a funny place to recycle it, really, isn't it? We'll give you some air from the engine rather than from actually outside, which you'd think would be a bit cleaner.
Yeah, and then they'll spray a pesticide on those long haul flights. Well, she actually said they're spraying them on the short haul flights now. I mean, do we really need that? But she said, in some of the flights she was on years ago, a lot of the passengers would go into deep sleeps, and they wasn't actually asleep; they were intoxicated.
Blimey!
And she went into the pilot's cabin as well once, and the pilot had passed out. So
I'm not laughing. I'm not, because it's so serious.
I know,
but it's like an episode of Airplane.
I know. And implants, years ago, I mean, people ask me why, but this is my old life. So I had breast implants. And,
because they used to burst, didn't they? I mean, you'd always see stories in the Sun or the News of the World. They would go, poof.
Yeah, they do tell us in the media, but, people not looking at the media every day. I don't anymore. Like the Daily Mail run a story on the fume events on airlines. They only did that a couple of months ago. So if you look up Daily Mail fume events, there's been class action lawsuits going on for years and years to do with all of these things, flame retardants in furniture. And there's a whole big story about that. There's a guy called Terry Edge. He's got a website all about that. He's a campaigner, talking about the fact that we buy these mattresses and sofas and they're off-gassing serious chemicals and metals, you know, to children and pets. You know, we're all breathing this stuff in. But I'm just going back to the implants. You know, I did that because I'd breastfed, my baby was premature, and, you know, just thought I'd treat myself, because after so much breastfeeding, you can imagine, I didn't really have much going on down there. And, you know, went into the private sector and I was told it was completely safe. Well, they're not safe, because they actually contain things like formaldehyde, various toxins and metals. Acetone is one ingredient, which is the thing that you get nail varnish off with. Something like 50 toxins in there.
So I used to use acetone when I was editing Super 8, and acetone would melt the plastic and join it again if you were very quick, because it was very toxic stuff. Wow. It's surprising. I mean, the thing is, I think a lot of the responsibility comes down to us, in terms of we've been so dumbed down, we don't ask questions. And so when you say, is it safe? It's like, well, I suppose what we should be saying is, what toxic chemicals are in there? Can you give me a list? Yeah. Formaldehyde, oh, that's an interesting thing to put into a fake boob. And acetone, and what happens if that bursts? And if somebody, you know, clouts me on the chest in a nice embracing hug, what happens if that all squirts all over me? Am I, you know, will it get into my system? Is it going to pollute my blood? Is it going to seep through the silicone, whatever it is made of? I mean, we don't ask those questions because we're not trained anymore to ask questions.
No, and we don't know where to look for, you know, supportive groups, because you go on Facebook, you need to know the actual names of the groups, because they, you know, they're hidden, you know, for whatever reason. So there's a Facebook group for breast implant illness, and there's 13,000 people on that group, or women, hopefully. But yeah, 13,000 people, and they're the women that even, you know, might know or come across the site. How many more are there? You know, there's class action lawsuits going on, you know, suing the companies that actually sell the implants. And another one people don't think about so much is gadolinium.
Gadolinium?
Yeah, that's
what
contrast.
Is that?
What they give you when you have a CT scan or MRI. So there's a Facebook group for people who've been injured by gadolinium.
And what did you say it was? I missed that. It's
a contrast that they give you when you have a CT scan or an MRI scan.
What do you mean by contrast?
It's what they inject you with before you go
to
the scan. So they say it helps them see, you know, more of what's going on in an organ.
Right.
But it's a toxic substance. When it's oxidized, it's like a silvery kind of metal. And so how many people have had one or more of those injected in them? I had it injected once when I was having, you know, various tests, and my electrosensitivity just went through the roof. There's a group on Facebook for victims, or, you know, people who say they've been injured, because some people notice the difference after one treatment.
Yeah.
And do you remember Chuck Norris?
The
actor. So you can look up his wife. They've been campaigning for about 5 or more years, because she nearly died from having contrast. So they are trying to sue the pharmaceutical companies on the basis that, you know, this is harmful. You shouldn't be giving it out. You know, how has it been passed for safety? So they've been on the news and everything, done lots of interviews. It's just trying to get the word out, isn't it?
I mean, it just, the more and more you've been talking, the more you just want to sort of find an island somewhere with a natural cave that you can sleep in. You have no man-made products whatsoever. No GPs, no doctors, no people in hospital with syringes, no government, and no mandates for anything. And just live very quietly with your family and a couple of friends, and nice. Perhaps a coconut. Couple of chickens.
Organic veg, that'll be lovely.
But it does seem that more and more we've got to retire from this modern industrial world, because everywhere you look, there are horrors.
But we've got to remain positive that it's going to change. You know, something's going to give, because we can't keep going on like this. You know, birth defects and, you know, miscarriage issues are just, well, you know, it's getting worse. And we just got to try and be the cleanest and possible, strongest and healthiest we can possibly be. You know.
Well, I suppose if we're all full up with these heavy metals, as long as we don't stand near any magnets or anything, we'll be able to walk about. Otherwise, we'll just get dunked up against the wall wherever these magnets are. I mean, although I don't think Mercury magnetic? Some of the lead isn't magnetic, is it?
Lead
Some of these
is magnetic. I don't know actually.
and aluminium isn't magnetic.
But they all hold a positive charge, so that's what
that's the thing.
Is all about. It's a positive charge, and there's your cells have a negative charge, so why they bounce off each other. So
is it possible to reverse the charge in the metals so that neutralize them so that they might be in the body but in tiny things, but if you can neutralize them so that they are then inert?
Well, I've seen experiments where a naturopath, a dark field blood analysis practitioner, and she did an experiment where she put pharmaceutical med into warm water and melted it, and in the capsule, some capsules are a black color.
Yeah.
Well, she found that when she melted it and left it for a few minutes, there was some substances in there, shall we say, that shouldn't be there, and she put a magnet on it, and there was quite a lot there. So you can imagine taking these meds every day, how much that would accumulate over the week,
blimey,
month, year, whatever.
Yeah,
a lot of people are on long-term medication, and the product I've been using for heavy metal detoxing, she put that into the substance and completely neutralized it. So that was just a simple experiment in a glass.
Yes.
So
right.
Yeah,
and so that's what the thing that you were talking about earlier, the root stuff, is there to neutralize the heavy metals.
Yeah, and interestingly, she did it on a supplement as well. So we've got to be really careful what we're taking from the so-called natural supplementation sector. Because I used to take something like 12 supplements. I only take 1 or 2 now, and we don't know what's getting into the plastic of the capsule. And she tested a vitamin D supplement that she bought in Australia, and the same thing happened. It had particles in it.
So these plastic capsules, I never quite understand why we've got to swallow them. Surely we could just have a powder you stick in a bit of water and swallow it, rather than all this plastic that presumably just goes through the body or is biodegrading in the body in some way, which doesn't sound very healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's very common when I speak to people, ladies, it's very common for them to open their cupboard door and they've got so many supplements that they're either taking or they bought and tried for a bit and wasn't sure. We've all done that, gone into this does this thing, and vitamin B complex does something different for me as it does for somebody else. And then actually we haven't thought about, is there contaminants in there? Are there things in there that actually, because we only really need trace amounts of vitamins and minerals. We don't need these big fat capsules. So I was probably doing myself more harm than good. And I feel better now not taking them than I was taking them.
Which is an irony in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're all chasing. I mean, the trouble that people have, I think, these days is that the corrective health industry, shall we call it, is big business as well. See, you've got the pharmaceutical business is big business, and then you've got all the supplement industries, and I'm people who perhaps offer supplements for people who go to a gym in order to sort of bulk up and things like that. People always sort of feel that there's a shortcut to something, a shortcut to health, and so therefore they're buying all this stuff. And I'm not saying people shouldn't buy all this stuff, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with all this stuff, but perhaps they're buying too much of it and not actually thinking, do you know what, if I just ate real food, if I could grow perhaps more of my own stuff and filter the water or distill the water, I wouldn't actually need to take all these shortcuts all the time. Which of course is all costing money. And
those big pots, you've seen them, of creatine, and all the boys go through the phase of taking all of that, and they're not actually looking at the labels, or worrying about where they're getting it, sourcing it from, and actually a lot of them are contaminated with heavy metals. So the one thing we're trying to get out and get ourselves healthy, we're actually taking by consent.
Yes,
toxins.
More and more.
It's absolutely crazy, and we're conditioned to think, oh, don't feel great, or want to get fitter, let's take something. When actually, the first thing we need to do is take the toxins out, then get a good quality supplement, and you're you'll absorb things better. You know, your body knows what it's doing. So if you're going to eat nutritious food, get the blockages away. You know, pull the toxins out, the metals, the fluoride, the glyphosate, fungus and mold spores. You know, the gut is can be such a mess. It was for me. So it didn't matter how much good food I ate or how much exercise I did, nothing changed. You know, I got myself to a point where I was functioning a little bit better, but the toxins were still there. Unless you, like you said, you're going to go off into a sedentary lifestyle where you can sleep for 20 hours a day and then just drink clean water and eat good food. That probably would work as, you know, long term as a good, you know, get the toxins out, heavy metals.
Oh, well, I'll give that a whirl. I'll see you in 20 days. I'll just go off
lovely,
and sleep for a while.
And do you remember in the old days, if you was ill, you know, your mum would put you to bed and you'd stay in bed for a couple of days. You know, people don't do that now. We take tablets, or most people take tablets or painkillers, and we get on with our day. And the one thing we really need is good, nutritious, nourishing sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Some good old-fashioned soup and a good, you know, 10 hours sleep. And I mean, I see, the thing is, I'm a bit of a workaholic in what I do, but if I'm ill and I feel ill, I know there's a point I have to go to bed. Sorry, I don't care what goes on. I will go to bed. And suddenly everything else can go out the window. But when I'm healthy, it's like, oh, I'm not quite under the weather. Just a bit tired. I will still crack on.
Yeah.
But there does come a point where I go, right, okay, I know the thing. I know what I've got to do. And because I do try to listen to my body, and that's it. It's like, see everyone, I need that darkened room, and I'll be out in 10 hours.
Yeah. And isn't it funny how quite often you lose your appetite?
Yes.
And that's your body telling you to fast.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I don't need any food. I just, you know, I'll have some water, and then I'll just go to sleep.
And have you ever tried fasting?
I do sort of it's not strict, but I do intermittent fasting on the basis that I try to eat early-ish in the evening, and then I try not to eat till sort of 11, midday-ish. So that could be, I don't know how many hours that is, you know.
Yeah.
But so I try to have one main meal a day.
Yeah.
Mostly. But I haven't done, I mean, sometimes I'm working or things have just worked out where I haven't eaten that very much. I might just have some nuts on the go, you know, plenty of water. But I haven't done one of these sort of 3-day fasts and things. To me, it's a bit barking.
Well, my partner did 28 days.
And he's still alive? Is he in a box somewhere? You bring him out on display and you go, there you are, 28 days. That's what happens. See you later.
It's a costume of a man. I mean, I wouldn't advise people to do that. It's just something he wanted to kickstart his detox.
28 days? Yeah. I mean, there must be, after 12, well, let's say 24 hours, he must have been going, I'll just have a biscuit. I just have
You're very, I've done it, I've not done it as long as that, but after 2 days, if you can get over the first 2 days, you feel absolutely amazing and you feel really at peace and you don't feel hungry. It's very strange, but you know, everybody's personal choice. You've got to be kind of relatively healthy-ish to do it. You don't want to, again, it's the adrenals, you don't want to put any pressure on them, but you know, it's his choice. He did it. He just drank distilled water and a few minerals. And
what was he like at the end of it? Was he 20 stone to begin with, and then only 5 at the end?
He was happy. He was funnier. That was the thing. He was funnier. His jokes were good. He was calmer and just happy and peaceful with life.
So do you hide his meals now? It's like, you're a bit belligerent at the moment. I'm sorry, you're not going to. You need another month off because you're funnier, kinder, nicer, gentler.
I like you more.
Yeah, I like you more when you haven't stuffed your face. So there we are. Thanks, love. No, that's really interesting, isn't it? So
great. I mean, he did that to kickstart a heavy metal detox. He got into the detox because I was nagging him for about 2 years. Come on, let's do it. Come on. You know, get rid of all those niggly little things that you've got. And after a couple of months, he got rid of psoriasis on his neck that he'd had for 30 years. That just all disappeared.
Wow. Now, that's interesting. My daughter has psoriasis, and she has it on her legs, which is very unsightly for her. So I might mention that to her.
Yeah.
Have a go for not too long. I don't want her to waste away, but that's an interesting thing. I mean, it may not work because everyone's different, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I wouldn't advise her to fast. So how old is she?
She's 30.
And she always had it.
It's only really developed in the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh, right. Well, they say, skin issues, it's where the liver gets overloaded with toxins and it just can't deal with anymore. So the bucket is full.
Right.
But yeah, skin issues. Say 30 years he was suffering and it just disappeared. Because he said to me after a couple of months, oh, I don't really think this detox is doing anything. So I said, really? And he said, no.
Did you say, that's funny?
It's funny because I wrote down your list of symptoms when you started.
Yeah.
How's the psoriasis on your neck? And he said, oh, yeah, that's gone. And I said, how's your hip problem? Because that was hurting you every night and waking you up. And he said, no, that's gone as well, yeah. I said, what about your foot injury? And he said, no, that's not hurting. And then he went on to weight loss, which is obviously the fasting kick-started that, but he lost 3 stone. Wow. And he'd been trying to lose weight for years, doing keto and Atkins and, all the trendy diets.
Well, clearly, if you don't eat, you're not going to put on weight. It's a bit of a clue.
Toxins are actually encapsulated by the fat. So if there's excess toxins, the fat will get hold of the toxin and protect it from your vital organs, which is,
right.
Partly why we're seeing an epidemic of big bellies, because that's where all your organs are, So your body's really clever at trying to protect you. So if you get the toxins out, then the fat...
So in other words, some of these, it's not PC to say this, so I'll say it. Some of these fat people, we should be a lot more sorry for them because their bodies are actually being very clever. They're full of these toxins and the body's actually protecting them.
Yeah. How many people are walking around kicking themselves thinking, oh, I ate that muffin earlier, I shouldn't have had the Chinese at the weekend, I've cheated, in the gym for hours every week, and really it's toxicity at the root of it. Get the toxins out and then your body will do the rest. It will, start to go back to its natural shape and, you feel better, you feel more energetic, you feel much like
it's a huge mind leap though to get people, if they're so used to, they're in a habitual pattern, to sort of go, I'm going to do something about my health. And you see people every day in cafes ingesting all inappropriate foods, stuffing them into their mouths and coming out looking extremely unhealthy, and it's not really doing them much good. But you can't tell people what to do, can you?
No, but something's got to click eventually, isn't it? Like, gee, woke up one day and said, I don't want to feel like this. I want more to life. And not that he was a lazy person or anything, but within a couple of months of feeling more clear-headed and motivated, handed his notice in at his job in the office and went back to his original trade, which was floor laying. So a physical job, I see this a lot. People just change, something changes. They either change career or they change relationships or, they give up smoking. When your body starts to clean up, you start to lose these urges. Like, there's some people who do a heavy metal detox to get rid of a skin issue and then suddenly they don't want to drink anymore.
Right, yeah.
So the body's sending really clear messages, don't do that, it's bad for you.
Well, there you are. So there you go. This is what we've all got to do in some form or other, maybe not straight into the deep end, but bit by bit, and learn what our body's telling us and detox, whether that's 28 days without food or very simple little a supplement that will shift all the metals out. It's obviously a gradual thing. You're not going to do it overnight. So, Nikki, thank you so much for telling me about all of this. It's been absolutely fascinating. So I can imagine that there'll be people now sitting at home with a screwdriver trying to get their fillings out, get rid of those. They'll be not eating for a month, and I'll get a lot of emails saying you No, of course. It's a very serious subject.
Yeah.
To take it gradually, seek advice. Now, you're going to give me a link to the substance, I nearly called it, which sounds very dodgy.
That sounds terrible.
To the root product.
Clean slate.
Clean slate. That's, I did actually write it down. And they can get in touch with you, or they can seek advice, obviously, and take it very, very carefully and very gently. And please don't use screwdrivers in your mouth. After all, you'll be putting more metal into your mouth than you probably wanted. Nikki, I really appreciate having the conversation about heavy metal, and I still am no better off at knowing any of the hits of Iron Maiden or any of the others, and I don't feel any worse for it. So there we go. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
It's lovely to speak with you. Thank you.
And meanwhile, of course, don't forget to unplug your Wi-Fi and hardwire everything up, because the EMF stuff is not very useful, apart from when you absolutely essentially need it. But as Glyn said, unplug the phone from your bedside so it's not charging up, pulsing into your your pineal gland.
Pineal gland, yeah. Turn everything off. I tell people to turn everything off. The router, if you want to do a little experiment to know whether you are being affected by EMFs around you, turn the circuit board off. Go to bed, turn the circuit board off, see how you feel in the morning.
There you go.
And then the penny might drop.
And your electricity bill will be slightly cheaper. It might be only insignificantly, but it will be slightly cheaper. Brilliant, Nikki. Thank you so much. Hope, ladies and gentlemen, you've got something out of that. Don't be fearful. Just take it very steadily, and you'll see some great results. I'll be back with more interviews and monologues and bits and bobs. But in the meantime, from Nikki and I, thanks for watching. And until next time, goodbye.